bonus topic off the top topic is, can Fox censor Tucker through 2024?
Well, Robert, I am now starting to think that maybe my initial assessment was too superficial. At the first, I said that they're getting rid of Tucker to throw him under the bus for that near $1 billion settlement that they agreed to pay. It didn't make much sense, but from a public PR perspective, they could make it look like they're firing Tucker to make right of their wrong, except Tucker was probably the only one at Fox openly criticizing Sidney Powell. So I said, that can't be the case. Then I said, okay, it's because he came out and he was critical of Big Pharma. He basically made Fox News look like the scoundrels that they might be by being beholden to pharma. That affects the way they cover things. But he wasn't talking about Fox News when he did his commentary, but he clearly was. And now I'm just thinking, see what's going on in the news, and it's going to segue into Crowder later on. Are they just trying to shut populist peoples up and down? Shut them down, shut them out for 2024. So because Fox News is not hiding anything, hated Trump, probably, I don't think they like Trump. And this looks like it's part and parcel of just shutting down the populist voices come 2024. And really all the other stuff is sort of secondary. And if that's the case, then what can Fox News do, or what have they done potentially already that might muzzle Tucker Carlson until 2024? Do you think he has not an NDA, but he's a non-compete? I mean, if he's fired, they can't avail themselves to a muzzle clause unless they fired him for cause. I mean, where do you go with it?
Well, I think the breakdown we did last week was confirmed just within a week in two aspects. One, that Tucker had a unique audience, unlike pretty much all of his predecessors at Fox, and that would show up in the ratings at Fox, and it showed up fast. They lost more than half of the 8 o'clock hour audience. And the other prediction was that it would bleed over into these people that come on, Hannity and Ingram, after him, and it did. They lost up to a third of their audience. You're talking about millions of views every single night. You're talking about, when you add that up, you're probably talking about, in terms of lost hours of views, something on the neighborhood of 1 billion hours of views they're going to lose over the next year. That's why their stock did not fully rebound at all after the announcement of his firing. It appears they're still down about $500 million. And that appears to be a fair estimate as to how much they lost every year. They're losing $50 million at least in value. And that translates into diminished economic value of $500 million on the conservative side, maybe worse over time. So I think that's just about something like 10% or so of Murdoch's net worth being at risk because of this disastrous decision to fire Tucker Carlson. The second aspect was that that Tucker would not go gently into that good night, but would likely he would be offered alternatives that are actually more lucrative than what Fox's contract was. That has already happened. Newsmax has announced a $25 million a year offer, and apparently what's been leaked is that he was only getting paid $16 million a year, which was about half what I thought he would be getting paid at Fox, given his value to Fox. And Newsmax was talking about not only full editorial control, but letting him actually pick other people at the network. I mean, basically letting him run the network. Basically, it'd be Tucker TV is what they're talking about. That gives you an idea for how the other people, his competitors, recognize his true market value. Tucker himself put out a short video in which what he previewed is a Joe Rogan style long form podcast discussion that's probably visual and audio of in-depth discussion of topics not being discussed, with meaningful debate, returning it to kind of like Firing Line with Buckley, combined with Joe Rogan, combined with Tucker style, probably focused on populist topics to engage in meaningful debate and discussion, free of the corporate gatekeeping that Fox did, free of the censorship control that corporate advertisers maintain. So there are photos put out this week by Alex Jones and his wife of him and Tucker hanging out. That may have been a few weeks ago, but gives you an idea for some relationships. James O'Keefe put out some favorable things. So, James O'Keefe might be part of some operation like that as well. So I think you're going to see it. And then the question become, Megyn Kelly noted that Fox seemed to be playing dirty with Tucker and how they handled it, threatening that they had some dossier leaked, that they had some negative dossier to Tucker. They don't understand that. None of that's going to motivate Tucker one iota. The bogus lawsuit that the New York Times tried to blame on it, was just a lefty another lefty producer managed to weasel her way into working at Fox, who was on the eve of getting fired for incompetence, who's never even met Tucker, who's apparently her primary complaint was she didn't like all the Christmas decorations around. So, I mean, not a credible legal claim whatsoever. But the Megyn Kelly floated the idea, and others, as to whether a non-compete agreement would basically censor Tucker. Well, first of all, Fox can't enforce that with actual censorship. So Tucker can go do whatever he wants. They could sue Tucker for economic damages if they have a non-compete provision. But there's 3 problems with that. One, it was leaked that they just fired him and that they interpreted as firing with cause. Well, if that's the case, then they don't have any enforceable non-compete arrangement in place. So they're going to have not fired him and continue to pay him if they're going to try to enforce a non-compete. Second, it's what's called efficient breach in the law. Comes from the law and economics school of law. Some of their ideas are very good. Some of their ideas are nonsense. There's a mixture of the two. I once wrote in law school that law and economics theory justified, which was advanced by Richard Posner, that Richard Posner might have to be murdered in the name of his own law and economics theory because it was a rational choice. I forget how I got there, but I was not a Posner fan, still am not. But some of their aspects are rational. Their efficient breach argument is there's times when it makes more sense to breach the contract for economic purposes for almost all parties. So, for example, I mean, what they could sue him for is they couldn't sue him to prevent him from speaking. They couldn't sue him from competing. They could sue him for the financial damage that they think the breach of the non-compete has caused. They generally don't enforce with injunctive relief, especially as to speech and press matters, non-competes. There'll be issues about the efficacy of the non-compete, the scope of the non-compete, and its application to say, for example, if he did his own long form podcast, I don't think that competes. Like if they were going to argue, well, this competes with Fox Nation. Well, it doesn't when you've terminated them. So, the people terminating Fox Nation because Tucker's no longer on there is because Tucker's no longer on there, not because he's competing. If he goes on and later competes, that's on Fox. So they don't have any damages. So the short answer is no, they cannot effectively censor him using a non-compete. And my guess is the non-compete would not be enforceable against where Tucker plans on going. And even if it was, it would just be Tucker reimbursing whatever some value that was. And again, it's hard to enforce a non-compete when you yourself terminate that person from being allowed to speak on your network.
Here, and I'll bring this up. I think this is it right here. Oh, the Adam Kinzingers of the world reveling in what they think is bad news for Tucker, which I think is going to be good news in the long run. But we won't watch the entire thing. Just
good evening. It's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country, kind and decent people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are.
See, we won't play the whole thing. I think many people have seen it, but it seems like.
Well, no, more people watched that than watched all of Fox News last week.
No, I don't know how many millions of views that had. And then you got
close to 100 across all platforms.
It's ridiculous. And then you got Adam Kinzinger saying, don't let the door hit your butt on the way out. Like these.
Yeah, and the Pentagon was excited because now they think their war whoring will go, the Sebastian Gorkas of the world will have no competition. Guess again. I mean, the fact that 2-minute clip was watched by more people than watched every Fox News show all week long tells you just how important and influential Tucker's voice is and how the new platforms, I think that, a Rumble exclusive deal would make a lot of sense. A lot of other places would make a lot of sense. That's the future. And they're funding that future. They're supporting that future. They're enabling that future by removing him. And what they're doing is discrediting Fox, who is a critical gatekeeper for the deep state on a range of conservative topics. And they basically they thought they were kicking him out of the gated community, and they didn't realize what they really did was tear down the gates instead.
Yeah, I was listening to a number of journalists comment on the fact that the Pentagon and these military heads and the media itself happy that Tucker Carlson is out because now it's going to make it easier for them to control public opinion and manufacture the consent that they have always wanted to support the war in Ukraine, Iraq, all this other stuff. I was listening to Dave Smith on Joe Rogan. it's dangerous to listen to that because it's enraging when Smith is incredibly well informed, and like, you just listen to everything the governments have done, and now they're celebrating the fact that they're going to have an easier time manufacturing the required consent to continue promoting these wars, proxy wars. It's amazing. We'll see what happens with Tucker. Pavlovsky, I know nothing that's private at all. Pavlovsky replied to the tweet when Tucker put out that video. So everybody obviously has their eye on the ball because Tucker Carlson is the ball.
Everybody else understood the importance more than the deep state and Fox did. That they understood that Tucker was a unique and idiosyncratic voice with a unique audience that would follow him and reject people that reject him. And they didn't understand that, just like they don't understand Trump.